The NeverEnding Story is an English-language 1984 film from West German director Wolfgang Petersen, which is often brought up alongside Legend, The Princess Bride, The Dark Crystal, Dune, Labyrinth, and Return to Oz as a source of childhood inspiration and nostalgia. We were kind of messed up in the 80s, weren't we? The plot follows a young boy named Bastian who is reading a book about another young boy named Atreyu, who's on a quest to save the world, only for it to become increasingly apparent that the book itself is aware of Bastian's existence, and that he is ultimately the key to Atreyu's success. On its own, it boasts an impressive soundtrack, a great sense of atmosphere. This scene...
You're my friend! I love you! You gotta move or you'll die! Move, please! I won't give up! Don't quit!
And jaw-dropping puppetry. But what a lot of people aren't aware of is that it's actually based on a novel by the same name by German author Michael Ende, published in 1979. Since then, The NeverEnding Story has had several adaptations, including 2 sequels to the film, multiple stage and musical theater interpretations, a mid-90s cartoon series, 3 computer games, a Canadian-produced 4-episode miniseries, and a 6th companion novel series published between 2003 and 2004 by other authors collectively known as the Legend of Fantasia series. What a lot of people also don't know is that author Michael Ende hated the film adaptation of his novel and probably would have hated a lot of the other derivative works too if he had been alive when most of them were produced. Why did Ende have such a hate-on for this movie? Well, he felt it didn't accurately represent the themes and ideas his book was trying to convey, and in fact that it directly contradicted them. And having read the book a lot over the course of my lifetime, yeah, I kind of think he's right. Not that this is a bad movie, or that this fact diminishes its impact on the pop culture landscape, but yeah, the book's so much better. I'm so sorry. Ende was born November 12, 1929 in Germany. His father was a surrealist painter, and his mother was a physiotherapist. Isn't that just a winning combination? Well, it wasn't to the Nazi Party, who, were kind of a big deal in Germany in the 30s, which meant that Mr. Ende Sr. spent a lot of time working in secret. And it also meant that Michael spent a lot of time learning poetry in secret, and being relocated around the country due to school closures and air raids. And all of this would have a tremendous effect on the types of work Michael would go on to produce, and the types of themes he considered important to convey. Being 14 years old and having your friends forcibly drafted into the German army and killed will tend to do things to you. Ende isn't that well known here in North America, but he's a bit more recognizable in the UK, and especially in Germany, where he's considered by some to be the greatest and most successful children's author in the post-war period, though Ende was always critical of the ghettoization of children's literature. That is to say, Ende doesn't compromise for his audience and deliberately includes heavy and at times highly socially relevant themes in supposed kids' books. One of his earlier works, translated into English as Jim Button and Luke the Engine Driver, features a sequence wherein a dragon has kidnapped a large group of children, chained them into a classroom, and is violently drilling lessons into their head about the importance of dragon purity. In Momo, a 1973 novel with some notoriety on this side of the pond, the central conflict comes from a group of inhuman bankers who replace genuine human interaction with tighter schedules and consumer products, literally smoking away the townspeople's time, leaving them in a state of anomie, exhaustion, and depression. If there's a general idea to be taken away from Ende's work and his attitude towards children and childhood, maybe it's that children should keep their minds open and active, since one which is not, or which is dull, will be stolen by someone else. And if you're starting to see a theme emerge on my channel, then good, my little plan is working. The film version of The NeverEnding Story only covers about the first half of the novel, and a lot of the really juicy bits concept-wise take place in the second half anyways. Moreover, okay, this is hard to explain succinctly, but basically the movie version has kind of this, yay, imagination undercurrent that it never goes super deep into. Bastian is a dreamer who draws unicorns in class and has bullying problems. At the end, he imagines up a new name for the... and ends up saving an entire fantasy world that lets him fly a kick-ass dragon to get revenge on his detractors. It's a movie about how super cool imagination is all by itself, and about how you can dive headfirst into the fantastical to deal with the unpleasant realities of your life. The book presents an argument to the exact opposite. Imagination without application is tragic. Anyways, to get to the meat of this, we really just have to dish out a novel summary, but there's no way to do that without getting into spoiler territory. So if you like to go into books fresh, then I highly suggest you stop the review right here. Go out, borrow the book, read it, then get back to me. We'll get cocktails sometime. Bastian Balthazar Bucks is an overweight, isolated child with a strained relationship with his father and a mother who has a bad case of the dead. To escape the nothingness of his existence, Bastian is an avid, borderline obsessive reader, and one day, while hiding from bullies on his way to school, stumbles into an antique bookstore where he spies a book entitled The NeverEnding Story. Thinking he's found an answer to all his problems, Bastian steals the book and runs away to his school's attic, intent to read it in isolation. The plot of The NeverEnding Story itself concerns an ornate fantasy world called Fantasia. Well, in the book they translate it to Fantastica, but Fantasia is closer to the German name, and that's what I'm going to go with too. Fantasia is beset by a literal plague of nothing, and thus it falls to a green-skinned boy named Atreyu to traverse the world and determine what's causing the nothing and how to stop it. After a highly surreal chapter, Bastian succeeds in giving the Empress of Fantasia a new name, thus curing her illness and stopping the nothing. Bastian gets sucked into Fantasia at this point, whereupon he is granted a magical amulet by the newly rechristened Moonchild, and told to go off into the world to tell stories. Bastian Natch uses his first wish to change himself into the type of person visually befitting such a heroic role, up to and including, no joke, changing his own race so that he looks cool and exotic. And if warning bells are starting to go off in your head about this behavior, good. He then travels around Fantasia by himself, complete with superhuman strength, speed, and the ability to grant himself and any others any wish he wants. He is hailed as a king and savior by nearly all he comes across, and soon gains a large entourage of followers. As time passes, both the adulation and the fact that with each wish Bastian loses human memory, he soon descends into egotism and delusions of grandeur, culminating in an unsuccessful attempt to take control of Fantasia for himself as emperor, whereupon he realizes just how far he's fallen and resolves to return home. The last fifth or so of the book deals with an increasingly disassociated Bastian attempting to piece together who and what he is, finally being able to fully accept himself, go back to Earth, and start living life properly with the skills he has learned riding fire lions and running through crystal cities. One of the major ideas the book discusses, particularly in the second half, is the transformative powers stories have over people. End loved fantasy, and often talked about how its literature allowed humanity to imagine a better world for everyone. But that's exactly the point. Writing, storytelling in the realm of fiction was always meant to bridge back to the real, to make the real world better, not escape it outright or abandon it. Let people realize what potential they have in the future based on what they can imagine now. Reading a book wouldn't have made the Nazis or the bombs disappear, after all. We all need to get away sometimes, but what's dangerous is when we don't want to come back. A lot of people give End heck over the book and his subsequent dislike of the film adaptation for being anti-whimsical or too focused on real-world concerns, but I don't think that's necessarily fair. Hell, the whole first half of the book is a desperate race against time to prevent the magical world from crumbling apart. If anything, End wanted to preserve fiction and literature from a world that would ignore it, undersell it, abuse it, or corrupt it. There's a particularly poignant scene about a quarter of the way through the book where Atreyu is talking to a werewolf who has been attempting to help the nothing. He's evil, that's his deal. The wolf points out that to sink into the nothing is to enter the world of humans, where their nature as fantasy beings will render them all lies and delusions. What are you creatures of Fantasia? Dreams, poetic inventions, characters in a never-ending story? Do you think you're real? Well, yes, here in your world you are. But when you've been through the nothing, you won't be real anymore. You'll be unrecognizable. That's why humans hate Fantasia, and everything that comes from here. They want to destroy it. They don't realize that by trying to destroy it, they multiply the lies that keep flooding the human world. For these lies are nothing other than the creatures of Fantasia, who have ceased to be themselves, and survive only as living corpses. You too will be a nameless servant of power, with no will of your own. Who knows what use they'll make of you? Maybe you'll help them persuade people to buy things they don't need, or hate things they know nothing about, or hold beliefs that make them easy to handle, or doubt the truths that might save them. Big things will be done in the human world with your help. The NeverEnding Story holds both Bastian's self-indulgence over fiction and the modern world's disdain or abuse of fiction in a critical light, and cautions against both paths. A society which doesn't respect stories will inevitably use them to hurt people, and a person which doesn't respect stories will inevitably use them to hurt themselves. The point I'm trying to make here is that this book is really, really good, and you should go read it. It's under 300 pages, readily available in North America, and it's summertime right now, so you might as well make it a part of your reading list.